There we go. That's kind of important. Like, we have people who can't be here, so I'm going to keep recording. All right, so the last time we were here, we had finished talking about the 3 different theories of emotion. We talked about the James Lange theory, we talked about the Cannon-Bard theory, and we finished up by talking about the Schachter-Singer two-factor theory. So I want you to keep in mind those 3 different theories. You are going to have a short answer question on those. So make sure that you have a pretty good understanding of at least 2 of them. And if you cannot describe them, can you draw a diagram of them? If you can draw a diagram of 2 of the different theories of emotion that we talked about, you're going to be all right. Hint, hint. It said Kim Kim. Hint, hint. Okay, apparently I don't enunciate enough. Okay. So the last time we were here, we were talking about the connection between how we think and how we feel. And for those who weren't here last time, I'm sorry that I didn't record. Zoom kind of like crashed out on me and it took forever to connect. So it's kind of clear that our thoughts affect the way that we feel about things. So if our heart is racing, our thoughts can help us figure out if it's because we're scared or surprised or excited or something like that. So the question becomes, can we actually change our emotions by changing our thinking? And it's kind of clear that cognition does play a role in emotion. One of the ways that we kind of see this is with something that is called the cognitive spillover effect. And the cognitive spillover effect is best explained by the Schachter-Singer two-factor theory. Oh, I was going to take my sweater off, but it's still too cold. So this is best explained by the Schachter-Singer theory. So imagine this is something that's actually pretty common that happens not just here in the United States, but in other countries. You're at a really tense football game or a really tense baseball game, and it's a high stakes game. Like, this isn't some beginning of the season sort of game. This is national championship game or trying to make it to the playoffs game. And so you're in this tense situation, and at least at that point, all of the emotions that you're feeling can be chalked up by, I'm in this very tense game. And then suddenly the game ends and you've either won or lost. But here's the thing about your bodily responses, they're pretty slow. So because of that, once the game is over, you've still got all of this arousal inside of you. You've got all this tension inside of you, and now you can't say, oh, it's because I'm in a really tense game. So it's part of the reason why sometimes when we're in these kind of tense situations, like somebody wins the World Series that hasn't won in a really long time, or somebody misses a playoff spot, it's sometimes why you will see fans of the game or fans of a team go out and riot and burn things after. I believe this happened when the San Francisco Giants won the Super Bowl. This happened when in the NHL, when the Vancouver Canucks didn't make it to a playoff. Or they didn't go on to the next stage of the playoffs. So what will happen is that all of that arousal will spill over into something else. You can't blame the game anymore. The game's over. So what do you do with all this arousal? I was tense at the game and now I'm just mad. I'm mad at this city. Let's wreck things. And sometimes what ends up happening is that arousal from things like soccer matches can actually fuel anger. This can lead to rioting. And in some cases, high stakes soccer games in Central America have occasionally led to actual wars between countries. There is a war in Central American history that is called La Guerra de Fútbol, specifically because It started because of a high stakes soccer game. Now, there were probably some other geopolitical forces going on that led to it, but basically what kicked it off was a high stakes soccer match between two countries. Spillover is a thing, and it's all about your cognition. Your cognition defines your emotion. Okay, is everybody good here? Okay. Oh, here we go. So interestingly enough, there are some times where we need cognition to define an emotion, and there are some times that we don't. So we're actually looking at two different routes to emotion. So we have an event that happens. Now, what is going to determine whether we immediately have an emotional reaction or we require a cognitive label? So some theories about this come from different groups of researchers. So a researcher by the name of Zions, yes, that's how you pronounce his name. It's like science, but it's Zions, and Ledoux said that there are some emotions that are going to be immediate, and you don't have to think very hard about them. And usually this is going to be for simple likes and dislikes. So if you like ice cream, your emotional response to getting ice cream does not require a lot of thought. If you're afraid of snakes, that fear is going to pop up without the cognitive appraisal, oh my gosh, it's a snake. So for simple likes and dislikes, we immediately will have an emotional response without the cognitive appraisal. On the other hand, another researcher by the name of Lazarus, as well as Schachter and Singer, who developed the two-factor theory of emotion, we do occasionally require cognitive appraisal. We need to actually think about what's going on before we can have an emotional response. So there are two different routes to having an emotional experience. One requires an appraisal, the other one does not. So sometimes we call this the low road of emotion because we don't need that cognitive appraisal. When we do need the cognitive appraisal, we call that the high road of emotion. Also, I didn't realize you could get KN95s in fun colors like these. Although it probably makes me look a little like a duck when I wear it, but that's okay. Okay, everybody good? Just a little bit? Okay. So as I mentioned, we have the high road. Now, not only do we call these because the high road and the low road because one requires appraisal and the other one doesn't, it's also because of where they go in the brain. So the high road of emotion requires a cognitive appraisal. So before you actually process that emotional experience, it's going to start in the cerebral cortex where a lot of your complex cognitive thought is. And then after going to the cortex, that information is going to be sent to the amygdala, which is critical for processing emotional experiences. So oftentimes this is going to happen for complex emotional experiences. So for example, back in August, many of you know that I had two grandparents pass away and I had to put down my cat. Those are all complex emotions for me because while I very much miss every single one of them, I am also relieved that they are no longer hurting or in pain. So those are very complicated emotions. I feel a lot of different things about that. Now compare that to the low road. The low road doesn't even use the cortex. The amygdala processes it right away. And this is going to be for simple likes, dislikes, and your fears. Hey, also, friendly reminder, set your clocks back by an hour on Saturday. You get an extra hour of sleep, but in return for that extra hour, please remember too that the sun's going to be down by like 5 o'clock. You're going home after class in the dark. Don't like it. I like that you just held a finger up like, don't touch it. Don't touch it. Don't push that button. You good? All right. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about emotional expression. That's been really hard to do when we're wearing masks all the time, hasn't it? Like, I don't know about you, but most of my facial expressions occur in my lower half, not my upper half. So it's like, even if I'm happy for you, you can't always tell unless you're looking for the little eye crinkles. Because at least for me, I don't know about you, I'm not very expressive with my eyes. It's mostly just my mouth. Like, like that was my face when I saw that turtle. That terrible, terrible turtle toy. Okay. So what are some basic emotions that we can express? I'm going to say that we should not act these out normally because we need to be wearing masks for a little while longer. But here's something that's kind of interesting about expressed emotions. So we often think of emotions that are expressed by faces, but we actually use our entire body to express our emotions. So if you see somebody who's like at a campus event and they're just like this, what are we thinking about this person? They could be cold. They could be waiting for somebody, or they could be completely disinterested in what's going on around them. So our emotions are not just expressed by our face, but by our body language and also by the patterns of intonation in our voice. So for example, if I came in one day and I'm like, hello class, how are you all doing today? I hope you're having a wonderful day today. You're going to be a little bit concerned about me. You're going to be concerned because you can see I'm pretty excited about teaching you because you can kind of see that in the natural rising and falling of my voice. So we use our whole bodies to express our emotions, mostly our faces, but there are other things that'll do that too. Okay, so we also get nonverbal cues. So we get body language. So if two people are having a conversation and I walk up to them and one of them kind of turns more towards their speaking partner, what are they sending the message? They're sending a message that I am not included in this conversation. Body language can really tell us a lot. Eye contact or gaze can tell us a lot. Please be careful with your eye contact. One thing I will tell you is that I personally have trouble with eye contact. Have any of you met with me one-on-one? Okay, a few of you have. Have you noticed I'm not really very good at eye contact in one-on-one situations? Like here, you can't tell because I can just look at all of you. But if I'm in a one-on-one situation, eye contact does not work very well for me. Please don't take it personally. I am listening to you, but I find eye contact really, like, it puts me in a really vulnerable space. I feel like I'm looking into somebody's soul, and I don't have the right to that information. Like, I don't have the right to look into your soul like that. That's not my place. We also have physical touch. But here's something that you need to know. Be aware that nonverbal cues vary in meaning from one culture to another. So, for example, if you do a good job in class, I can give you a thumbs up, right? I'll give you a thumbs up. Do you realize in certain cultures that this is offensive? Thumbs up can be offensive in other cultures. Now, if I flip you the bird, which I will not do because I'm a professional, if I flip you the bird, you're going to be pretty bothered by that. Well, maybe some of you might. Most of you might just be shocked that I know how to do that at all. But in other countries, it's considered a sign of good luck. Like, people got really shocked once when they saw a picture of Japanese sailors all holding up the middle finger. It was a sign of good luck. It is not like, forget you, if you get my drift. And one of the best ways that I've seen this, and you can actually find this on the internet, I like Mystery Science Theater 3000. It's like a comedian and a couple of like robot puppets make fun of really bad old sci-fi movies. And so there's this one called Pod People. And it's a movie that's filmed in Spanish, but then badly dubbed in English. And it was trying to be like E.T. But there's a scene where they're in a music studio and somebody's like, well, how do you think we did? And the guy basically does this. And he says, it stinks. Now, this is not the circle game. This is not, he was trying to say the sign for okay, but he was being sarcastic about it. And in Spain, this is the sign for zero. He was already saying it was bad. So it's really funny when you watch it dubbed in English because he's saying the sign for okay, but then he's saying it stinks. It's a juxtaposition because these hand gestures mean different things in different cultures. So look it up. It's a Mystery Science Theater 3000. It stinks. And what's really funny, they take that running gag the entire rest of the series. Anytime somebody makes an okay sign, one of them will go, it stinks. So one of the things that we find is that you and I are generally primed to spot the negative information over positive information. So negative information, especially when you're younger, stands out more. So if we're looking at a crowd of faces, it turns out that you can notice an angry face faster than you can notice a happy one. Remember that negative information in our ancestral history was a big deal. If you made somebody angry, they would kick you out of the group. And in our ancestral history as a species, if you got kicked out of the group, you were in a lot of trouble because the group provided protection. Ostracism literally meant death thousands upon thousands of years ago. So we're going to try this. Tell me when you see the angry face, and then tell me when you see the happy face. Just raise your hand, okay? Are we ready? Okay. You see a happy face? You missed it? Now we'll try that again. Okay. We're going to start with the happy face. Are you ready? Raise your hand when you see it. Okay. Now we're going to try the angry face. It's a lot easier to spot the angry face. There's just something about the angry eyebrows. There's just something about the angry eyebrows. So here's something kind of interesting. So it has often been said, and it has often been said that by and large, people that present as women or people who present as female are often the more emotional gender. Here's what we know about gender and the relationship between emotion and nonverbal behavior. By and large, people that present as female do have better ability at discerning nonverbal emotions. Now, I would argue that some of that is largely socialization. If you present as female, it is often your job to do the emotional labor in relationships, to take care of relationships, to check in on people and see how they're doing. If you present as male, you are typically not tasked with that kind of emotional labor. Now, here's what's interesting. Women express more emotions than men do. They express more. But here's what's interesting. Despite the fact that women express more emotions, people who identify as male aren't any different in terms of the emotions that they feel or their physiological responses. They are just less likely to express them. And to be fair, there are a couple of emotions that if you identify as male are often considered okay to express. Anger is one of them. Interestingly enough, anger is often one of the emotions that if you identify as female, you are not allowed to express. All of the other ones are okay, but don't get angry. They'll call you hysterical, which is sexist. Okay, so here we're actually looking at the number of expressed emotions for different types of films. And so we're looking at sad films, happy films, and scary films. And by and large, in every case, people who identify as female do report more facial expressions in sad, happy, and scary movies. But what's interesting is that for people who identify as male, they express far more emotions for happy movies compared to sad or scary movies. Especially for scary movies. That gender discrepancy is pretty large too. But ultimately, the feeling of the emotions are not that different. One gender has been encouraged to express, the other has not. And obviously, we need to do more research on things beyond a gender binary. Just to be clear. There needs to be research on that to see if there are any differences. So here's something kind of interesting. How many of you saw the movie Inside Out? If not, you totally should. Now, what are the emotions that are involved in Inside Out? Do you know them? So there's joy or happiness. What else? There's sadness, fear, disgust, and one more. Anger. So here's what's really interesting. So Inside Out was, they actually consulted the researcher Paul Ekman. Paul Ekman has basically found that there are 6 basic emotional expressions that we encounter. And all of them match Inside Out, except we also have surprise. And the reason that they did not include surprise in Inside Out is because surprise and fear look a little similar to each other. But here's what's interesting. These basic emotional expressions are reported across cultures. These same expressions are identified and expressed all around the world. And this is even true in cultures without TV or movie exposure. So this is something that we do. And it seems to be instinctual. So here are those basic emotions. So here we have happiness, surprise, fear, sadness, anger, and disgust. And some of these expressions have an evolutionary basis. So I know it's kind of hard to do this with your mask on, but make a disgust face for me, if you can. Yeah, is everybody's nose crinkling up a little bit? So Darwin actually believed that a lot of these facial expressions have a strong basis in evolution. So when do you make a disgust face? When is the last time you made a disgust face? I usually make a disgust face when I open leftovers or I open milk and it's sour or it smells bad. So here's what Darwin says. So when you make your disgust face, you crinkle up your nose to basically close off the nasal passages so that you don't breathe any potential contaminants in from your spoiled food. Kind of interesting.
You say happy, sad, anger, fear, disgust, and what was the other?
Sadness. Yep.
I did say that.
Okay. Happy, surprise, fear, sadness, anger, and disgust. Now, there is a lot of talk about whether there are 8, whether there are 4. So there's still a lot of discussion on whether some of these are basic or if we need more. So there might be too many, maybe they are too few. There's still a lot of debate going on. Right, everybody good? Okay. I'm going to skip this because it doesn't replicate. I talked about this last time, so I'm sorry this slide is still in here. There's this idea that if you kind of put these golf tees on your eyebrows and you cross them to make a sad expression, that you'll feel sadder, but it doesn't really replicate very well, so I'm going to skip it. So now with the time we have left, I do want to start talking about stress and health. So I'm going to keep this pretty quick. We're going to talk about anger and happiness. Anger and happiness. So let's talk about what makes us angry. So the most common cause for many of us are when friends or loved ones commit wrongdoings. They do something bad and they do something bad to us. And that's especially true if they're willful, unjustified, and avoidable. This means because they were willful, that somebody chose to hurt us. Unjustified, they didn't have a good reason to hurt us and they could have chosen differently. So yeah, try not to be a bad friend. You'll make somebody angry. But I will mention this. I'm generally a pretty happy person, but I need to mention that I am a happy person, but I do not subscribe to toxic positivity. It is important to feel the things that you feel. Oftentimes when you bottle up your feelings, that often tends to make things worse. Not to mention, it does fuel resentment towards other people. So it's really important to express your anger in a healthy way. We're going to talk about why in a minute. So there was this idea, and yes, I did this. I made this slide and I love it. So there was this idea that venting, basically laying into somebody for what they did wrong, like, how dare you? How could you do this to me? I did everything right. How could you do this? Like venting like that. There's this idea that if you let it out in its fullest effect and let out all of your rage, that it provides an emotional release. This is what was previously referred to as the catharsis hypothesis, this idea that venting provides release. So should we do as Emperor Palpatine says, and release your anger, let the hate flow through you? No, it turns out it doesn't actually help. And in a lot of cases, it actually makes it worse. Generally, if I vent at somebody or about somebody, with my full emotional expression, what I often find is I don't leave the situation feeling better about the person. If anything, I feel angrier. And additionally, you actually manifest more aggression. Venting leads to more aggression, more anger, not less. And here's the other thing, it's really reinforcing. So I would never actually do this, but imagine that you get your third exam back and it's terrible. Like the whole class did bad. And I'm just up here yelling at you like, I can't believe you did this, you know? And I mean, it might get you to behave. It might get you to study harder for the next test. Y'all, I think you're gonna do fine. And I would never yell at you. But it might change your behavior. And for me, all of a sudden yelling at you like that is reinforcing. I got what I wanted because I yelled, which means I'm more likely to do that in the future. Now, here's the thing. It's important to express your anger. Pent up anger leads to resentment. And there's a very good saying about resentment that I take heart to. Resentment is like taking poison and waiting for the other person to die. Resentment hurts you. It's important to express your emotions, but to do so in a healthy, constructive way. Definitely don't give in to knee-jerk reactions if you don't have to. It's better to think it through. State your feelings using I statements, not you statements. That never makes any other person feel good when you're like, you did this. It's more, I feel this way when you did this. That tends to make it better, but it's important to express your emotion in a healthy way. Don't vent it out. Venting does not prevent explosion. Venting creates more explosions. Okay, now, what about happiness? Why should we focus on this? Well, we know a couple of things. We know that happiness comes with some personal benefits. We know that generally happy people perceive the world as being safer. They perceive the world as being more stable. They easily make decisions and cooperate readily with others. And generally, they tend to be healthier. They tend to feel more energized, and they tend to feel like they're pretty satisfied with their lives. They are more likely to be married, but again, that's probably a correlational finding. We don't know if happy people are more likely to get married, or if marriage makes you happier, or if there's some third variable. Additionally, they're more likely to make money or make more money. Generally, once again, that's going to be correlational. Take it with a huge grain of salt. Also, they are more likely to help others. This is what's referred to as the feel good, do good phenomenon. When you feel good about your life and your place in it, you're more than likely wanting to spread those good feelings that you have to other people. So you're going to be more likely to volunteer and be active in your community. Right. Okay, so here's something kind of interesting that you may not know, and you don't need to write this down because, well, it's a graph. Your happiness levels actually fluctuate throughout the day. So generally, we're going to find that while your negative emotion kind of doesn't really fluctuate, it only really gets kind of high It's a little high when you first wake up, but it's really high right before you go to bed. But in general, positive emotion fluctuates throughout the day. It's pretty low when you first wake up. It peaks about 8 hours after you wake up, and it starts to lower once you go to sleep. So that's kind of interesting. I don't know how much I buy it. Grace, you're a little skeptical too?
Does this look different if you take a nap?
I don't know. I can look that up though. I bet it might. So does our happiness change throughout life? Generally, we are going to find that over the long run, our emotional ups and downs tend to balance. So right now, if you're generally not in a good place, take heart, because good feelings are probably pretty soon to follow. So very, very few of us have just bad things constantly happening one right after the other for a long period of time. Like we'll have those short periods of a couple of months for sure. And maybe we'll just have a really bad year. But we'll generally tend to find that that will eventually be balanced out by a time of greater happiness. Now, you might wonder if you became disabled or if you had a terminal illness of some kind, whether that might change your happiness. And they can bring us down over the short term, but we're pretty resilient. And we often tend to underestimate how strong we can be. So, oh no, I'm gonna start talking, but you can still write. So you might be kind of curious as to how we judge how happy we are at any given moment. So how many of you might have this happen where you study for a test in a really tough subject and you get a B? Would that make you pretty happy? That's the best grade you've ever gotten in the class, so that'd be pretty good, right? And then all of a sudden you find out that everybody else in the class got A's. All of a sudden that B that you were happy about suddenly doesn't look that good. So one of the ways that we judge our happiness is by comparing ourselves to other people. And oftentimes we're going to find that when we do this, we are often looking at people who are better off than we are. We're doing an upward comparison. The other way that we can kind of judge our happiness is we can look at where we are and then look at a time in the past where things might have not been so good. So we're looking at how we change over time. I'm going to skip this. Money can buy happiness up to a point, but it turns out that once you get to the point where you have enough, generally, there's no relationship. So as long as you can afford to have enough and pay your bills and have decent food and have a roof over your head, at that point, money doesn't really matter. It matters basically up to about $75,000 a year. Once you're past that, there's no relationship. Okay, so our prior experiences often help us judge how happy we are. So here's something kind of interesting. So imagine that tomorrow you win the lottery. How many of you are going to be so happy when you win the lottery? I would. That's a lot of money. I don't care that I have to pay a lot of taxes. I'll still have a lot of money. Lottery winnings are taxable income, shockingly enough. But yes, you do have to pay taxes. But here's what's interesting. So you'd be really happy because at this point, that's the most amount of money that you've ever had compared to the past. But over time, as you get used to having your new winnings and your new standard of living, you're going to start to adapt and it's going to be less happy making. It's basically going to become your new neutral level. So here's what we kind of find. There are a lot of things that will make us happy when we get them. So for example, I was like, I'm going to be really happy when I get tenure. Well, I have tenure. And yeah, I'm still very happy that I have it, but it's a part of my new normal. Like it's my normal now. And so because of that, it's probably not going to excite me the way that it did before. We adapt to new events in our life and judge our happiness based on what is normal for us. So for example, the adaptation level phenomenon would say, you're happy that you got a B because this is the best you've ever done in the class. But with each subsequent B that you get in the future, it's going to make you less happy because that is your new neutral level of performance. So you're adapting. Now, on the other hand, we also judge our happiness based on comparisons to other people. This is relative deprivation. So it looks like we're running kind of short on time. I was hoping we would start chapter 10 and we have about 7 minutes to do it. But whatever I don't finish on Monday, I will be recording. And it won't be very long. This is a short, quick chapter. So that is one benefit. It's a short, quick chapter. That's why I feel pretty comfortable recording it, whatever I don't finish. But I think we'll make pretty good coverage. You might have to write a little faster or bring your laptops that day, though, if that's okay. If we want to get through as much as possible, but really do what's comfortable for you. I'll roll with it. It's not my job to tell you how to take notes. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and skip this. There are a lot of things that we think will make us happy that don't, like marital status or things like age or education or physical attractiveness, stuff like that. Like I can tell you I'm not testing on it. That's why I feel pretty comfortable just skipping it. Okay, stress and health. How many of you are really, really stressed right now? Yeah, I know. And it's probably not going to get any easier the closer that we get to the end of the semester. But on the positive, look at my pretty slides. I did this on a Microsoft Surface tablet like back in 2014. So that's why it looks kind of pretty. Okay, so what is stress? Folks, what sort of things stress you out? Capstone. Yeah, that could stress somebody out. The play, yeah. Study abroad. Yeah, a lot of things can be really stressful. So how we commonly view stress, we actually have a pretty good understanding of what stress actually is. We view stress as things that are threatening to us, like exams or capstone, or things that are challenging, like tests or capstone, and then how we respond to it. So we say, this is stressing me out. So when I say I'm being stressed out by this, I am talking about my response to a stressful situation. So what is the definition of stress? So the definition of stress is the process of registering and responding to threats or challenges. And so the threats and the challenges are known as stressors. The way that we respond to that stress is called a stress reaction. So for the test, make sure that you know the difference between stress, stress reactions, and stressors, and be able to identify them from examples. but I think we'll make pretty good coverage on this next time. It's pretty short, and I'm thinking if I had to record, it'd probably be 20 minutes or less. So that's not too bad. All right, everybody good? Okay. So how you view a stressful event really matters. So remember how we talked about appraisal, like how cognitive appraisal affects our emotions? As a result, cognitive appraisal affects how you respond to stress. And it turns out stress can actually be a really positive effect for you if it's short-lived, or if you view what's coming up as a challenge and not a threat. Now, stress can be harmful to us if we view something as a threat, or if we are exposed to stress for a long period of time. Folks, your autonomic nervous system was not designed to stress out the entire semester. Your fight or flight system was to basically make sure you run away if there's a bear coming for you. And that's supposed to be pretty short-lived. So let's say that we're looking at something like a really tough test, a stressful event. So we can think about this in one of two ways, and it will affect how we respond accordingly. So if we view it as a threat, the test is in front of you and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't know any of this stuff. I'm so scared. This is beyond me. You're going to panic and you're going to freeze up, and you're probably not going to do as well as you would have otherwise. On the other hand, if you view something that is stressful as a challenge, this is a chance for me to see what I know and learn where I'm falling short. That will basically give you focus, and the stress will actually give you arousal, which can help you perform your best. So stress can be a good thing, folks. Good things can be stressful. So for example, how many of you like Christmas? I love Christmas. Sorry, Halloween people. It's my time now. I'm being really nice and doing a kindness and not playing Christmas music until after Thanksgiving, even though I really want to. But Christmas is actually a really stressful time for all the fun it brings. Good things can absolutely be stressful. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and stop here because I'm going to need a little extra time to talk about these, the things that cause us stress. So we'll go ahead and stop here. We will finish this up on Monday. You do not have a quiz, but your project is due on the 15th. So use the time that you normally would be using for a quiz to get a little more work done on your book project. Have a wonderful weekend. Go see the play, and I will see you all here on Monday. Bye, everybody.